so we'll go ahead and get started. Again, first of all, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from today, and regardless what time it is, welcome to the Jamf and Mann Consulting three-part web series on automating workflows. My name is Patrick Watkins. I'm a channel manager for managed service providers at Jamf. I'll be one of your hosts today, along with Isaac Ordonez, who is the Director of Technology for Mann Consulting. Isaac, if you don't mind, just say hi to everyone out in TV lands and share just a little bit about yourself and Mann Consulting.
Hi, Isaac Ordonez, Mann Consulting. We are a Jamf and Mac-focused MSP out of the San Francisco area. We manage a ton of Jamf instances and kind of have a lot of experience with unique scenarios and situations, kind of growing companies from small to large, secure and high trust. And we've automated a lot of our implementations into Jamf. So we don't recreate them by hand, we upload them, which has been really helpful.
Hence the name of the web series, Automating Workflows.
Yes.
Right up your alley. Well, thanks,
Your
Isaac.
head.
Just a panel here in just a moment, but in today's conversation, we're going to be focused on healthcare and compliance. But be sure to tune in next Tuesday, June 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern for part 2, which will be on patch management. And then finally, we wrap up this three-part series on June 25th, same time, talking about day-to-day IT management. Last thing I want to make note of here is be sure to hang around until the end of today's session, because my good friend Melody will be dropping a link in the chat for everyone to have the chance to win some really cool prizes, including an Apple Watch. Before we get started, I just want to call out a few things. First, feel free to utilize the Q&A function within Zoom Webinar. And if you have a question you'd like to ask, please pose it in the Q&A. Somebody on the panel, myself or Melody, will get to that and get it answered. Second, we will leave time at the end for anyone to come off mute if you feel so inclined to ask questions. And that can be me, Jeremy, Zach, Isaac, anybody on the panel. You'll just raise your hand within Zoom Webinar, and then we can invite you to come off mute. Third is what we're not going to do today. We're not going to do death by keynote or death by PowerPoint. This is going to be a conversation. And if I do my job well, hopefully we'll have plenty of that. Let's introduce today's panel. And Zach, I'm going to start with you. Can you introduce yourself and just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your company, your role, and then Jeremy, do the same.
Absolutely, Pat. Thanks for the intro.
Yeah.
I'm Zach Still. I'm the CISO of Brightline. We provide coaching and therapy services through telemedicine to kids and teens across the United States. We're actually in all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii. All very exciting, serving underserved populations and everything in between. We currently manage around 300 Mac endpoints. We are a 100% Apple shop. No exceptions there, which is great and always a fun conversation. I oversee IT security and compliance, and that's everything from laptop deployments, help desk, security, the whole realm of security, vulnerability management, scanning, etc. And that's pretty much it. I'm based out of the Midwest as well. Jeremy?
Nice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, greetings to everybody, and thanks for having me be on the panel as well. My name is Jeremy Bauer. A little background about myself is I have 25 years experience with organizations, typically classified as startups. I have approximately 10 years experience in the healthcare industry. I'm currently the CSO and the CIO for Vana Health. And our mission is to rebuild the payment model and technology to enable community-based care so people with serious mental illness can enjoy long, healthy, meaningful lives. And our goals are really to improve social and clinical outcomes and really lower the cost of care. So at Vana Health, I oversee a lot right now as a young startup. IT ops, security, compliance, and privacy. it's a big chunk of the pie of around what we're talking about today. And my technology landscape is really predominantly cloud-based, as most, I think, probably on the phone now in today's IT society, with approximately only 70 devices, physical and virtual, both Apple, both WinOS. And I have a variety of MSPs and vendors, including Mann and Jamf. And we support clinical physical locations along with the majority of our workforce remote.
Okay, very cool mission, by the way.
Thank you.
Anything healthcare related, whether it be physical or mental, like I think is an admirable space to be in. So kudos to both of you. So I'm curious. And I'd like to hear from both of you on this. Can you talk just a little bit about what it's like to implement compliance controls within your organization, whether it be in partnership with Jamf or Mann or other aspects of your business? And Zach, we'll start with you on that.
Sure. I started at Brightline at a very early stage, and it was very greenfield, which allowed me to leverage the capabilities of Jamf. And I actually came in, Mann was already being used for help desk and laptop deployments. And I came in and I'm like, oh, who are these guys? And not to, this is not my Mann sales pitch, but I probably 2 conversations in with Isaac and Pat from Mann, I was just blown away. I've been a Jamf customer since 2010, and really just was so impressed with the breadth of knowledge that they had around Jamf and security. Isaac's contributions to CIS benchmarks, so impressive. And so when it comes to compliance, I'm thinking about vulnerability management, the ease of laptop deployments. We want to be able to drop ship our computers to users. They turn them on. Everything is fully automated from the Okta login to application deployment, and even beyond that. So that's deployment of software for individuals that need a particular application based on LDAP groups and that sort of thing. And that was something that Isaac helped us set up. I think the biggest thing for me is really around patch management, ensuring that we are addressing and enforcing CIS benchmarks, and we're really cherry picking those based on risk. And I think they've, there's the CIS benchmarks that have been created, but then Mann has their own benchmarks that kind of sit on top of that, and it's been great to be able to leverage all of those and just really out of the box. And we just say, turn this on. Pilot group deployment to the whole organization, very, very smooth. And then on top of that, just making sure that all of our applications are up to date, that the workflows to update those applications are very smooth, and that if anything is out of compliance, there are self-healing policies to resolve those without any user intervention. I think that is really the biggest thing for me, and why I got so interested in Jamf in the first place is having a platform that can really eliminate headcount or reduce the need for additional headcount, and just been really impressed.
Yeah, and I think that actually segues nicely to another thought that I had, and that was like, ultimately, when you're thinking about the things that you were just talking about, I'm curious, like, what that's meant for your business.
Yeah, we have very few help desk issues. our things just work. We have built documentation, built out sets of documentation for setup, but there is very little documentation out there for troubleshooting because we just haven't had a need to create it. And so it's, you know, it is the dreaded "have you turned it off and on again?" is my favorite is the uptime spec, and it's like, well, you haven't rebooted your computer in 68 days, so let's start there. So super helpful.
Yeah, and I think that just goes to show that, like, you know, the best resolution is not needing to have one in the first place. So yeah, time saved. Jeremy,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on implementing compliance controls?
Well, certainly, and I have to echo and agree with everything that Zach has said. And I really look at compliance in two ways. One is the what's in the hows, and for us in the healthcare industry, the compliance focus, of course, is HIPAA, and we must continuously monitor through mechanisms to be compliant to HIPAA. And those mechanisms are what everybody understands, whether it's HHS's security risk assessments, your own annual risk assessment that you do for risk review, but it also has to leverage the HIPAA rule sets, NIST frameworks if you use them, company surveys, and compliance reporting. And so where I really see the value of especially what Mann can apply here is what type of what I can extrapolate from their compliance reporting. You have to have all of the controls in place, whatever, if it's a SOC 2 or if it's a high trust. If you want compliance, especially if you want compliance around controls like in rule sets like HIPAA, you need to understand what are my controls and how do I provide the evidence to show that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so having these types of compliance reporting, number one, is I don't have to rebuild, I don't have to generate it, I don't have to build it, I don't have to figure out how do I do it, because there's already these sets of tabs and everything that give you all of that, and you don't have to worry about it. You just have to make sure that you have continuous, methodologies that go look at the reports. You have to go look at them to be able to ensure you have compliance. But secondly, what if I can augment on what Zach said about, I don't have to worry about writing these policies or what these policies are because it's already programmatically done. And I think that's one of the most powerful thing about using an MSP and using Mann is that not only do they have these reporting capabilities, but I don't have to write policies that just are inherently there. When they set up my Jamf environment, it was just done. And I have all these things like, oh, did you remember this and this and this and this? It's already inherently there. So you don't have to write policies. It's policy reduction. It's SOP reduction that you have to do to get compliance. And so it's not only the reporting available to you, but it's the actual doing what you need to do to make sure that you minimize all that extra work, which then brings down how many people and resources you need to manage. I only have 60 devices, but I didn't have anybody when I first started with the startup, and Mann was 100%, and I still was way ahead of the game in being able to drive towards a very mature security program right out of the bat. But I've been in startups for a very, very long time, and it usually takes you 3 to 4 years to get that robust, very, very mature security program. And with Jamf and your automation and with what Mann practices allow you to do as an MPS, you have that almost day one, especially with provisioning of your endpoints. So that's the way I see it. It's just the what and the hows, and when you don't have to worry about the hows, you worry more about the what's.
There's one thing I like.
Very well said.
The one thing I like with Zach's comment on like part of compliance is patching and keeping things up to date, but there is a like collateral benefit from that of if you keep everything up to date, you're not troubleshooting issues that like Apple has already fixed and your user just hasn't run the update or Google has already fixed, right? You're not constantly chasing the whether or not you've updated. So you kind of tick two
Um,
boxes at the same time.
so then, is it safe to say then that, if not done in the right way, not only are you risk of not being compliant, but compliance can weigh down an organization, like in terms of efficiency and even cost. Like we agree with that, right?
Yes and no. I mean, there's not always doing something the most right way. It's whether you're doing something about it and can show evidence that you are compliant. It
Mm,
to me is far more important. And so, yeah, doing it the right way is how we all want to work. But
yeah.
whether you have technical debt or whether how big you are and whether how defined you are, if you have an okay way, but you have 100% of saying your okay way is working, that to me is more important than the okay way. I mean, maybe I'm weird, but that's just the way I think about it.
No, Jeremy, I'm weird. I'm the weird one here. No, that's a really good point. And that makes me think, Isaac. So we've heard from Zach and Jeremy about what implementation looks like and what some of the challenges are and like some of the pitfalls are. Can you just talk a little bit about how Man approaches ensuring that folks are remaining compliant or becoming compliant, and what that looks like? Obviously without sharing any secret sauce.
Sure. I mean, our goal is automation everything, right? It's we shouldn't have a human touching it, and I think that's a good place to get when you're managing your Jamf instance, even if you're doing it internally, is don't have a button to constantly click. Um, that's a repetitive motion that you don't need to do. The second part is getting the data out somewhere that you can quickly look at it to see that it's working and like monitor all of your automations at once. Um, I know we promised very few slides, but we'll give an example, like a two total. Um, like this is an example of an application inventory that comes out of Jamf as a compliance report. And it's something that we've provided, Zach and Jeremy. Obviously, this is not their data, but it gives you an idea of what applications are installed, what the patch levels are, and it even gives you relative data to like when the application was last updated. So you don't take that quick point in time of like, why is my Zoom patching low when Zoom was updated yesterday? Um, so giving yourself kind of 1,000-foot view, I think, is really important when you're trying to meet compliance and patching as part of that. Um, also, testing and rolling out. I mean, Zach, you love patching. What do you love about like the like prompting and deferrals and like how do you feel that that kind of helps your users move the patching forward?
Yeah. So I think some of the newer things that you have introduced around scheduling. So we have a lot of therapists, a lot of coaches in the field that are delivering, that are having sessions with our members, and because we serve kids and teens, it's usually after school, and so we don't want to be patching between 1 p.m. and 6 or 7 p.m. at night. We want to do it before that, and if our therapists are being patched in the morning and they're going and their computer is being restarted and they're going into a session, there is a very small chance that they're going to have an issue. One, because they've been patched and their computer has been restarted. And yes, there is a little bit of friction with a reboot, and there's a pop-up window that if the application is running. If it's not running, it's just patched in the background without anyone knowing. But OS updates and that sort of thing require a restart. And I just I've gone through so many iterations of patch management over the last 14 years in Jamf, and um, reboots in the middle of Zoom meetings, etc. And just like horrible stories, executives, didn't happen a lot, but it did happen. And when it happened, it was not good. And we don't have those issues anymore. And same goes for our member support team. They're on the phone from 9 to 9, and um, we want their patches to run overnight, and they come in the morning and restart their computers, and they're off and running. So I think it's so intuitive and user friendly, and we give them chances to defer as well. So you just have to weigh the benefits and make sure that your teams are productive.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I think this report, one other thing that I think it supports is what Jeremy was talking about earlier, and that's the idea that like we have to be able to prove that we're doing this stuff, and this helps support that. Jeremy, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not a fair assessment. I think it's an absolute assessment now that when you're dealing with the complexities that you have, you have to drive towards continuous monitoring. And if you're going to do continuous monitoring to be compliant as of now and as the future, doing this manually is just, you're going to have a workforce and you're going to have SOPs and you're going to have all these things that you have to do that everybody's just going to hate, right? And so when you can do something programmatically, and that's the way you must do things now. It wasn't a choice. Well, it would be great to have something programmatic. No, it's now you if you're not, you're hurting. You have to have things programmatically. And so whether in and yeah, that's great for your CI/CD or your development lifecycle, but it goes that way for your compliance and your security lifecycle too. Of the 25 years that I've had to deal with this throughout my career, I find that was the biggest aha when, we finally woke up and said, you know what, we need automation as well, and we need to know when users have the access they have and when they don't, and what app they have on their endpoint and what they should and should not have. And when it's all automated and it all comes out and it's reminders and you can code those reminders, that's really what gets you to a mature security program, in my opinion.
Quickly, kind of more of a question for anybody who's joining us. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges you have meeting compliance? Mel's going to pop up a little question, and if anything comes up that we want to discuss, once you've all answered that, we can bring that up. But I just wanted to interject real fast.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and yeah, certainly take part in the poll. So if you're multitasking, stop right now, take a look at the poll, and let us know. Like, this is stuff that we have the panel. We want to make sure that we're getting folks' concerns addressed, or if there's something that you're just curious about, bring that up in the Q&A as well. We've talked a little bit about benchmarks, and how that oftentimes is the measuring that runs hand in hand with being compliant. Let's talk a little bit about what it looks like if we're trying to achieve benchmarks without help. Let's chat about that. Zach, imagine a world where you're trying to tick the boxes for benchmarks. Like, what comes to mind? Like if you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, I think Jeremy touched on this earlier as well, and I definitely agree. I think it is creating a glut of manual processes to dig up the information that you need. And that is, the administrative burden is immense, yes, but it's also not challenging for employees. People don't get excited about emailing a whole bunch of people and chasing down information um, to get a compliance report put together. On top of that, you've got user error, and the more manual process you have, the more issues that you're going to run into.
Yeah, yeah, and in my experience, the more human involvement we have in any process, whether we're talking benchmarks, compliance, really any process, that's a huge failure point, and that puts us at risk for possibly not being compliant. Jeremy, I could almost see your blood pressure raise this webinar when I brought up the idea of like having to achieve these benchmarks on your own. What are your thoughts when it comes to ensuring that we're hitting those benchmarks? Again, I'll pose the
Yeah,
same question to you. Like you did it on your own.
yeah, exactly. So I think that it's the best thing to do is enforce some set of limits as to what controls or what benchmarks that you want to measure yourself against. There are so many different frameworks and so many different benchmark and versions of benchmarks that you can use. Be cautious and make sure that you're not driving a problem that's already impossible to succeed at, is solving anyway. And
Yes.
so make sure that you understand, and me being in healthcare, our main focus, of course, is HIPAA. What are the benchmarks that you need to apply to those three HIPAA rule sets that the government is, forces you to be compliant to, and work from there and start small, start precise, be crisp, and then expand and augment. That's what you want to do. You're not, I mean, working in, of course, my historical point of view is from startup, beyond. And when you're in startup, you just got to say what is critical, because you're going to be scrappy, you're going to be malleable, you're going to be moving quickly. Acceleration is extremely important. So don't overburden your organization by so many, we have to meet this benchmark. Be focused, be crisp, be precise. Then as you grow and you have more resources and more programming capabilities, then expand and enhance. And don't forget about enhancing. Go back and look at what you're doing and say, can we do it better? That's when you do it. You don't have to build the best right away. So I think if my best advice is that keep it simple, keep it small, be crisp, and then expand as you can. And you'll take technical debt. Everybody knows this is going to happen. Just be cautious and don't shoot yourself in the foot, I guess, for sure.
Put that on a billboard. Don't shoot
Yep.
yourself
Yep.
on a billboard. Um, Isaac, what about you? Like, how does Mann approach working with customers to like achieve various benchmarks?
So we try and take a stance of not just trying to meet one, but cherry picking from a number of them. Um, you have an alphabet soup of different compliance benchmarks. You have STIG, you have CIS, you have NIST, you have, pick some letters and throw them at a wall, and you probably have a benchmark, right? So what we try and do is sit down and try and figure out what they're trying to achieve, and maybe sometimes cherry pick from different benchmarks to bring those together and come up with a compliance that suits them. And we also try and get as granular with the compliance. Like sometimes there'll be a large brush stroke over one of the controls that kind of just puts you in this place of like, you must do all of these things, or it'll be vague as far as you must think about auditing all of these things. We try and bring that down to a little more granularity so that they can pick and choose even like sub parts of a control that they need to apply. And then we bring that all in somewhere where they can report it. The one example here is, similar to how we brought in the app updates. into a central place. We also brought the controls into a central place so that you can quickly see how you're doing on a day-to-day basis. You can go back in time, you can go to the present and see your compliance for different benchmarks. It also allows us to create more granular controls. As you can see, we have like sub-controls for certain CIS controls. And then the ability to cross-reference them with the STIGs, NIST, etc. And this gives somebody like a very large view of their compliance and what they're missing as well. Not just what they have, but also showing the negative of like, what did you miss? What maybe do you want to think about implementing? And then we can filter that and kind of have a similar discussion. So those are kind of where we've implemented these for our customers. So far with good results, I'm assuming, from Zach and Jeremy being here.
Yeah, it's probably safe to assume that you're doing all right, Isaac. That's probably a safe assumption. Just a thought. So if let's say we're working on rolling out compliance for devices, and let's say like Jamf and another tool like Intune is in the mix. There's some burden on the end user to enroll themselves, which then taxes the internal team working on that. Like, what suggestions would y'all have if that were a scenario you were faced with? And we'll do notes.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. I can
go ahead and start.
Yeah, I think documentation that is very simple. I think that's an obvious one. And then also office hour sessions where people can come and walk through it. And you basically just try and get as many people into these office hour sessions as you can. People can ask questions as they're going through. Other people will most likely have similar issues. And as you get feedback around, or if you see people getting stuck, update your documentation, add some notes to that documentation so that it is very clear what that step is or what the next step is, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree with all of those things. What's most important that I have seen is that you're going to, with provisioning and whatever MDM tool that you use, whether it's Intune or Jamf or other, you have to interact with other departments of your company. And first and foremost, whether you call it HR, whether you call it people ops, it's 50-50. It can be either one in an organization. What I found was that it's critical that there is an alignment of what this full onboarding process looks like. And Zach already kind of laid out a little bit of like, how is your documentation? Do you have that learning curve ability for accelerating your user into let's go and let's do our job? It's also important that as you communicate with HR and you integrate with those different types of tools like Rippling or whatever you do, any automation or communication that you have to be able to automate the onboarding aspect is important as well. One thing that we do, even as a small company we have less than 50 people, I have integrated what our HR system does and how Mann handles that. We actually automate ticket systems to them so they know exactly when the hiring is, what type of device they need, what type of profile they have, and what persona this person is to make sure that they get them what they need. And even though it's a 15-minute call, that everything automatically happens, it's a starting point for us then to move on and do the training. But yet, most importantly, I think what Zach was hitting was the self-service augmentation. And so if you do that self-service where it's either a Loom or documentation or what have you, you can identify and focus on that. and don't have to worry about the compliance pieces and the check marks piece of, do they have encryption? Do they have to log in? Are we monitoring what they can do and they can't do? That's all automated. These are things that you don't have to worry about that you would have to when you start up a company. And so now you're worrying about, how do we make sure they have the beginning, the on day onboarding, and then if they forget, ways to go back and do self-servicing. So that to me, that's the kind of the larger picture of how all of these automated tools and how Mann literally is assisting with me being able to automate my onboarding in a very, very efficient way. So I ask the onboarding person, because we're such a small company, I call them and I say, how did your onboarding go? And they love it, because all they do is they open their computer and 15 minutes later, they're literally looking at email and other communication tools. It's marvelous.
Yeah, I like the idea of HR being in charge of onboarding, not IT. They're entering the person in the system. They know their start date. They're not going to miss anything. They're in touch with the hiring manager. Why isn't that initiating account setup and laptop deployment, as opposed to a post-it note over to IT, who then has to read handwriting and do something
Oh,
else?
that's the
Um,
worst. That's
it
the
is the
worst,
worst.
Isaac. I mean,
Uh,
and then it's manual. I mean, and it's like, and they forget things and they don't. Who is this person? What are they really doing? If you have that integration that Jamf allows you to do, and the processes that you have put in place, I have to give a call out to our buddy Michael, who is excellent at that arena. He, I mean, he literally got on a call with me, and a week later, we had everything set up and ready to go. That I had a programming automated onboarding. Just excellent resource. Excellent resource.
yeah. Also, kind of touching on getting enrollment done from a onboarding perspective of a, like, maybe you already have a bunch of employees that have laptops and you're getting into starting to start compliance. I think device trust is a very good way to ensure that onboarding happens for everybody, like requiring access or enrollment in Jamf to access certain resources for your job. Um, or programmatically grabbing data out of Jamf and matching that to Okta or whatever your identity source of truth is, and seeing a list of users that have, or employees that have signed in recently, and a list of computers that have checked in recently, and matching that actual active data together um, really helps you make sure that everyone who is active as an employee has a laptop and is enrolled. So it gets that enrollment campaign like really moving along, and helps you stop double dipping on like contacting people to ask if they've done this. Um, also,
Yeah.
quickly, Mel, do you want to throw up another question? I'll let you randomly pick one.
Thanks, Mel. While she's throwing the poll question up, we've kind of naturally just like uh, transitioned to Q&A, especially with the last topic. But we have one that's open right now, and I'll read it. So the only drawback of being on the bleeding edge of technology is that sometimes it cuts you. But with compliance, while it should be our endeavor to automate app updates to ensure compliance with the vendor's latest version, sometimes services from different vendors might stop communicating effectively with each other. And so the question then becomes like, how can these situations be tackled differently and effectively to ensure compliance is maintained while the other vendor plays catch up?
Um, Kind of one thing that I found that has been helpful is implementing delay controls into your automated processes. So, you know, automate Google Chrome must update, but when a new version is found, don't update it for 6 days. And that gives Google some time to sort their issues out, re-release a new version if there's anything major there. And that's at least from a programmatic standpoint. I don't know if you, either Zach or Jeremy have anything for more of a process standpoint that they like to implement.
I can hear the wheels turning.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, Google is the bane of updates, and trying to successfully do that. If you have a solution for that, let me know, because every third day it seems like they want to update their browser. But I think that you're right. I mean, I think that just because there's an update, unless it's a 0 day, doesn't necessarily mean that you should update it right away. And if you have the capability and the resources to allow yourself to do some type of testing prior to, whether it's in sections of your company or everybody, I feel that that's highly important too, because not every patch is perfect, and it doesn't mean that the patch isn't perfect and it doesn't deploy, marvelously without any issues. But what does it do when it interacts with all the other apps and all the other controls and everything else from a holistic point of view that you have on your endpoint? So I think to add to what you're saying, Isaac, is I would definitely include not only delay, but also a little bit of rigor around, okay, yeah, the patch works, but what does it do to my whole environment and to the whole endpoint? I guess I would add to that.
Yeah.
I've been there too many times where it's, oh no, this just got deployed and now our most important application that everybody uses doesn't work. And so now we have to roll it back and it's a disaster. Test it first. But everybody probably on the call understands that. But I guess I can't emphasize it enough. Don't forget.
I'd love to see the metrics on the risk of issues happening from not patching versus the metrics on the risk of issues from patching too soon, and see which one is actually higher. Like one, it feels like you've done because you've patched, and the other one you have to be, reactive to, and, you know, all of a sudden realize you missed a patch. So those are definitely something that hopefully somebody
I
out there could.
I think that'd be interesting. Just the same thought occurred to me, Isaac. I'm like, okay, like the whole time
Yeah,
I'm sitting here thinking it's a balancing act.
yeah,
It's how much risk am I comfortable with?
yeah.
Uh, that's what it comes down to. And by the way, I think one theme, and maybe this is by design, um, on the poll question, like when we ask folks like what's most important when implementing compliance controls, like everybody's, or not everybody, but like the top answer was automatic remediation. And that's because like we just don't like dealing with this stuff. Like it's oftentimes forced upon us, and so then we're like, okay, I guess I got to do this now, and it's just more work. So the more we can automate, and um, so we got a few minutes left. If there's anybody who would like to come off mute and ask some questions, we can certainly give you the ability to unmute and ask. And again, questions can be for anybody on the panel, including Isaac or myself. So we'll give folks the opportunity to request to come off mute. And I don't see anything new in the Q&A section. We did have a couple questions there, but I think they got addressed. Any closing thoughts, gentlemen, while we're giving folks time to decide if they're brave enough to come off mute or not?
Closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think one of them, if you have the ability to make your end users standard users and not admins, that really can help get you started on the right foot, and kind of reduce those shadow IT issues. Um, you know, you can whitelist apps, deploy only from self-service, and um, monitor via DNS tools, whatever tool you want to use for that. And I think the other thing is really just building a culture of security, giving, if there's an all hands meeting, taking 5 to 10 minutes to teach people what a 0 day is. how that can affect an organization, um, how that can affect a healthcare organization in particular. You look at some of the ransomware attacks on hospitals, et cetera. And it the damage can be put put hospital systems out of business. I mean, it happens probably once a month, and creating that security culture, and so that when people see that critical patch come up on the screen, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to do this because it's going to protect our organization." Um, Kind of getting people into that mentality, I think, has been a huge help for us um, in and our compliance program, and really, instead of security being a burden, it's something that people take responsibility for and is a positive thing.
Yeah, it's valued. Um, it's valued. To your point, I mean, it's not a burden. It's important to everybody. So, and by the way, Zach, I gotta say, like, instilling a culture of security, that's tough. That is tough. Like, it is really tough to do that because oftentimes, security and convenience are at odds with each other, and we as humans, it's always humans causing the problem here. Go figure. Uh, Humans like convenience. And so if there's an opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to make my life easier, but it's less secure, typical end users are going to go for that because everybody's busy.
Yeah,
Everybody's
I
busy.
think the whatever onboarding training that you do needs to be fun and not, these are the 3 areas of HIPAA compliance and, you know, boring. Uh, Make people laugh, and they'll get through it, and they'll actually remember things.
Very well
Yeah, I
said.
mean, I think that's right, Zach. I mean, I think that it is a cultural. It's cultural, and like everything that when you have more than one person in a room, and you're going to have some type of cultural activity, and it's important to maybe not focus on this is security, so we have to do it, but this is why we're doing it to help our company be successful. And does it mean that if you don't patch and there's a problem, it hurts you from being able to help the company and be able to do your job and be passionate about why you're there and what you like to do. So spin it a little bit. And I tend to, I mean, it's so inherent now. It's, yeah, we all need security, but how do you make sure that you get to be you and you have your genius as the workforce and the individual that you are to be able to keep doing what you're doing? And yeah, make sure you're doing all this because these tools are important. When you don't have email and you don't have your Apple laptop or whatever you have, it's harm on you, and you're kind of harming yourself. It's not a security issue, but let's make the the wholeness available to you by doing the things you need to do. Make it as part of, yeah, I'm part of the solution.
For sure. For sure. Um, Isaac, I think you got a couple things you want to touch on before we wrap up. And again, I'm keeping
Um,
the Q&A. It looks like we might have one more. Hang on.
do we have one more?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Isaac, can you show the free workflow slide again, please?
That's what's coming up. Don't worry. There was one before Q&A and one after, but we kind of arced over it. So, housekeeping. We do have 2 more webinars coming up for anybody who would like to join us. On June 18th, we will have a patch management webinar with Avron from Index Ventures. We will also have a day-to-day IT on the 25th as well, kind of going over more like day-to-day IT items. We'll do a deeper dive into patch management then, and maybe we can ask more questions about automatic patching and rollout rings and stuff like that to kind of um, try and avoid those landmines of updates. And then lastly, we do have a promotion because we are doing this, for profit, I guess. We are offering 2 free months of our standard workflows, which include application patching, some baseline security items, and device health, and a compliance report that will auto update as part of that. So you can sign up, mann.com/jamfpro, reach out, and we will get that going. And then Mel will also be dropping a link in the chat with it's there?
It's there.
Gotcha.
Made it.
Since I'm presenting, I can't see the chat, so.
Got you.
So that's there. So feel free to reach out to either Slack me on Mac admins if you want to continue the discussion and chat some more. Send us an email, visit our site. Love being part of the Mac community, and I feel like everybody here is doing a great job. And so Zach and Jeremy, thank you so much for taking time today.